He was a billionaire with a perfect life, until one woman crashed his speech with a secret that could destroy everything. Cameras flashed, gasps echoed, and his past, buried in guilt and broken promises, came roaring back. But what she revealed, it wasn't revenge. It was something far worse. Keep watching. The lights were warm, almost too warm, casting a golden glow over the stage where Richard Langston stood in his charcoal suit, polished shoes planted firmly on the sleek wooden floor. Behind him, a screen read in bold white text, "Legacy through innovation." He smiled easily, effortlessly, a practiced expression that made him look more like a Hollywood actor than a tech tycoon. His silver hair caught the light, and the crowd of investors, influencers, and press leaned in, waiting for him to speak. "This isn't just about tech," he began, his voice calm, magnetic. "It's about impact. Real people. Real futures. And when my wife and I started this journey, why did you break your promise to her?" The words came out clear. Not loud, but sharp, like glass snapping in a quiet room. Richard blinked. Just for a moment. In the third row, a young woman stood. She wasn't dressed like anyone else here. No sleek black cocktail dress. No designer name tags. Just a faded blue jacket, jeans with worn knees, and dark hair tied back in a frayed elastic. She didn't move, didn't fidget. She just looked straight at him, steady as stone. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Someone cleared their throat. Another whispered, "Who let her in?" Richard's smile faltered, barely noticeable, except to her. "I'm sorry," he asked, still trying to hold his composure. His voice had cooled, just a little. "I said," she repeated, her tone unwavering. "Why did you break your promise to your wife?" There was no aggression in her voice, just truth, raw and exposed. Like she wasn't trying to ruin him, she was trying to remind him. Something shifted in his face. For a fraction of a second, there was recognition, or guilt, or maybe fear. But then he caught himself, straightened his back, adjusted his mic like nothing had happened. "I'm not sure what you're referring to," he said smoothly, already glancing toward security near the side wall. But the woman didn't sit down. She didn't yell or cry. She simply said, "Her name was Elena, and she told you to protect girls like me." Gasp this time. Audible. One man even reached for his phone. Richard's face drained of color. Not visibly, not dramatically, but anyone paying attention could feel it. Like the air had gotten colder. He looked down at the podium for a moment. His hands gripped the edge, knuckles white. The applause that had greeted him minutes ago was now replaced with silence. Waiting, watching. The woman slowly stepped back into her seat, eyes still fixed on him. She had said her piece, but it had cracked something wide open. Richard turned toward the screen behind him again. Those big, bright words glowing like a spotlight on a lie. Legacy. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like the man he'd built himself to be. The room had emptied, but the echo of her words hadn't. Richard stood alone in the green room, still wearing the tailored suit, still holding the speech he never finished. The applause had vanished. So had the crowd. Just silence now, and the quiet buzz of fluorescent lights overhead. He stared at his reflection in the floor-length mirror, hands braced on the countertop. His tie hung slightly off-center. Not a big detail, but it bothered him. Behind him, his assistant Maya walked in quietly, holding his coat and a bottle of water. She hesitated at the doorway, unsure if he wanted company, or if this was one of those moments. "She's still outside," Maya said softly. Richard didn't turn around. Did security speak to her? They tried. She wouldn't leave. Said she's not here to protest or cause a scene. Said it's personal. He finally looked at Maya through the mirror. His eyes were tired now. Not the exhaustion of work, but of something deeper. Something old. "Do you know who she is?" Maya asked carefully. "No," Richard said too quickly. Then quieter, "I don't think so." But he had recognized the name. Elena. He sat down, slowly, in one of the armchairs across the room. For a second, he reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out a small photo, creased, worn, something he rarely looked at in public. His wife, Elena, smiling in a hospital bed, her head wrapped in a scarf. She looked tired, but her eyes still shone. That picture had lived in his coat for years. A reminder. Only now, it felt like an accusation. He remembered the way she'd whispered it to him in those final days. Promise me, Richard. Don't just give speeches. Give someone a real chance. He had nodded, sworn it, believed he meant it. But that was years ago. The fund had been cut. Quietly, cleanly, to redirect money into the next startup accelerator. No one questioned it. Not even him. Maya sat across from him now, her voice gentler. Who was Elena to you? She asked. She was everything, Richard said, almost in a whisper. She kept me human. He looked up suddenly. The calm he wore earlier had slipped. Why now? Why would this girl show up now after all this time? Maya shrugged slightly. Maybe she didn't come to ruin your reputation. Maybe she came to remind you of it. The words hung between them. Outside the tinted windows, LA buzzed like it always did. Restless, shining, fast. But inside, Richard felt still for the first time in years. And in that stillness, something inside him shifted. Just a little. He didn't know her, but she knew his wife, and that changed everything. Outside the venue, the night had settled into that cool hush only Los Angeles knew, where the city buzzed, but the stars stayed hidden. Marisol leaned against a metal railing, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the front doors like she was waiting for someone who might never come out. She didn't check her phone, didn't look nervous, just patient, quiet. Her breath rose in faint clouds. Her jacket was thin, a size too big, and her boots were cracked near the toes. But she didn't seem cold, just grounded. Inside, Richard hesitated by the lobby doors. He had changed into a more casual coat. His tie was gone, the sharp lines of his appearance now softened. Less billionaire, more man. Sir, said Maya behind him, you don't owe her anything. Richard looked over his shoulder, then turned back to the doors. That's the problem. I think I might. He stepped outside. Marisol saw him approach, but didn't move. Her eyes narrowed, just slightly guarded, but not cruel. Thank you for not having me dragged out, she said. Richard stopped a few feet away, hands in his pockets. You made quite an entrance. I said what I came to say, she replied. Not here to scream or get my 15 minutes. I'm not that girl. A beat of silence passed between them. Where did you hear her name? He asked. Elena? She was like an aunt to my mom, Marisol said. They met at the hospital, worked night shifts together. She used to write letters to me when I was a kid. Richard's breath caught, just for a second. She never told me. She didn't want pity, Marisol said. But she did want you to keep your promise. She believed you would. That stung more than he expected. Richard leaned against the railing beside her. There was a scholarship fund, he admitted. We started it together. It was supposed to help girls in your neighborhood, girls like you. I know, she said. I applied. Twice. A few years ago. He looked at her, surprised. I didn't get it, she said, with a faint, bitter smile. Because by then, it didn't exist anymore. His shoulders dropped. Shame spread slowly across his face, not loud or dramatic, but heavy. You're right, he said. I let it go. I buried it in the numbers and told myself it was business. Marisol finally turned to him, her voice firm but calm. She didn't ask you to build an empire. She asked you to remember someone like me. And you forgot. The street was quiet now, the sounds of clinking glasses and laughter from the afterparty fading into the distance. Richard nodded slowly. Maybe I did. Marisol pulled something from her bag, a letter. Folded, yellowed slightly with time. She left this for you. My mom found it years after Elena passed. Said it was never delivered. Richard took it with careful hands, his throat tightening as he read his wife's name in handwriting he hadn't seen in years. You don't have to read it now, Marisol said. But you should know she believed in you, even at the end. He looked at her not as a stranger, but as a thread of a life he thought he'd already grieved. And for the first time tonight, Richard didn't feel like a man defending his past. He felt like someone facing it. The morning after the confrontation, Richard sat at the head of a long glass table in his downtown office, 12 floors above the city. Sky on one side, headlines on the other. Tech mogul called out over broken promise to late wife. Viral video sparks outrage over canceled scholarship fund. Who is the woman who confronted Richard Langston? The articles were spreading faster than any press release could spin. Maya slid a tablet across the table. If we respond quickly and stay vague, we can weather it. Deny direct knowledge. Say you're reviewing the matter internally. Richard didn't respond. His fingers tapped rhythmically on the edge of the tablet, but his mind was elsewhere. You haven't read the letter yet, have you? Maya asked quietly. He stopped tapping, met her eyes. No, he said. Not yet. Why not? Because I already know what it says, he muttered. And I know I failed her. Maya leaned forward, her tone shifting from professional to personal. You don't need to carry this alone. Make it a statement of growth. Frame it as a comeback. He laughed under his breath, dry, tired. A comeback. People love redemption arcs, she said, half joking, half serious. But Richard stood abruptly, grabbing his coat. I need to go see something for myself. Southwood Heights wasn't on any investor's radar. It was all cracked sidewalks, chain-link fences, and low-slung apartment buildings. Paint peeling, graffiti half-faded. But to Elena, this place had meant everything. It was where she had started her nursing career, where she'd made promises that Richard had inherited and forgotten. He parked on the side of the road, out of place in a luxury sedan, and walked past corner stores and empty lots. It wasn't pity that filled him, it was recognition. This wasn't foreign. It was just far away from the world he'd built for himself. At the edge of a small playground, Marisol sat on a bench, flipping through a worn book. She didn't look surprised to see him. I figured you'd show up, she said. Most people don't. I'm not most people, he said, but even he didn't sound convinced. She looked up. Did you read it? He hesitated, then slowly pulled the envelope from his coat pocket. Still sealed. I'm not sure I can. You can, she said. You just don't want to know what it'll do to you. There was no venom in her words. Just truth. Raw and uncomfortable. He sat beside her. The wind was cooler here. Real. No luxury walls to block it out. I told myself cutting the fund was just business, Richard said. Margins. Roy. Strategy. But it wasn't. It was convenience. Marisol closed the book and studied him. You had everything. She just wanted you to remember the people who didn't. He stared down at the letter. What if she says she's ashamed of me, he asked. Then maybe you deserve it, she said simply. But that doesn't mean you can't change. There was no crescendo. No shouting. Just quiet honesty between two people on opposite sides of the same story. Richard nodded, more to himself than to her. His hands tightened around the envelope. Still unopened. Still heavy. For now. The city dimmed as twilight sank through the windows of Richard's study. Everything around him gleamed. Mahogany shelves, a fireplace that flickered more for aesthetic than warmth, and framed accolades tracing his rise from nothing to everything. But on the desk, there was only one thing that mattered tonight, the unopened letter. He sat down slowly, running his fingers over Elena's handwriting. Familiar, delicate, a curve in the E that only she made. It almost looked like she had written it yesterday. But he knew it had been years, tucked away, sealed in silence. For a moment, he just stared at it. His breath slowed. Then, with hands slightly trembling, he opened it. Richard, if you're reading this, it means I wasn't strong enough to hand it to you myself. But you need to hear this, because if I've learned anything about you, it's that you mean well. Even when you forget how to show it. There's a girl. Her name is Marisol. Her mother, Teresa, held my hand when you couldn't be there. She helped me laugh when the pain got too loud. She told me stories about her daughter, and I thought someone should believe in her. That someone was supposed to be you. Not with headlines, not with stage donations, with heart, with action, with the kind of legacy we once dreamed of before the world started applauding. If you're reading this, it's not too late. Don't let me be the last part of you that remembered what matters. E. By the time he reached the end, Richard's face had changed. No tears, but something more hollow, more real. He placed the letter down gently, like it might crack if he moved too fast. And then, like a weight falling from the inside, he whispered to no one. I forgot her. A gust of wind rolled through the open window, rustling the curtains. For a moment, He felt like Elena was still there. Not judging, not angry, just waiting. He stood, moving to a shelf where a photo of them on their wedding day sat behind a thick pane of glass. He took it down, wiped the dust off. His thumb lingered on her smile. Then he picked up his phone. "Maya," he said, voice steadier than he felt. "Yeah, I'm here. I need a press slot. Tomorrow morning. I'm not reading a script. I'm not taking questions. I'm just going to speak." She paused. "You sure?" "No," he said, exhaling. "But I'm done being someone I can't recognize." Outside, the sky deepened into navy, stars just beginning to peek through the smog and haze. And somewhere in Southwood Heights, Marisol sat on her front steps, the night breeze tugging at her sleeves, unaware that the man who had once forgotten her was about to tell the world who she really was. And more importantly, who he used to be. The auditorium wasn't as full as the day before, but the tension, thicker. No spotlights, no applause, no sleek presentation behind Richard Langston. Just a single microphone and a bare stage. A quiet hum of anticipation filled the room as he stepped into view. No music, no introduction. He looked different. No tie, no practice grin. Just a plain navy shirt and the weight of something finally real resting across his shoulders. In the third row, Marisol sat silently. Her arms were folded, but her eyes were open, watching, cautious. The world had seen her face. Headlines spun versions of her story. But she didn't care about the noise. She was here for one reason only. Would he tell the truth? Richard stood in front of the mic for a moment, saying nothing. Then he took a breath. "I've spent the last decade giving speeches about progress, innovation, and impact," he began, his voice unpolished, almost gravelly. "But none of those things mean anything if they come at the cost of your word." He paused, glancing toward Marisol, just for a second. "Years ago, my wife Elena made me promise something. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't about money or growth or image. It was about a girl, a scholarship, a future." He swallowed hard. "I broke that promise." A rustle went through the audience. No one expected this version of him. No script, no PR spin. I didn't lose sight because I was evil. I lost sight because I got comfortable. Because the more successful I became, the easier it was to forget the people who helped build me, especially the ones I loved most. He gripped the podium tighter. "Yesterday, a woman stood where you're sitting now and reminded me who I used to be. Her name is Marisol. And while I never met her before this week, she knew my wife. She carried her memory when I chose not to." Marisol's eyes widened just slightly. Richard looked directly at her now. "Elena wrote me a letter, one I never opened, and in it she asked me to protect you, not with charity but with promise. That letter found me yesterday, and it wrecked me." He stepped back from the podium. "So here's the truth. The scholarship fund is being reinstated immediately. And it's not just for show. It's not a tax write-off. It's not PR. It's about keeping a promise I never should have broken. To my wife, to you, to every girl like you." Silence held for a beat. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "Not just for what I did, but for forgetting what she saw in me when no one else did." And with that, Richard walked down the steps, not away from the crowd, but toward it. No guards, no handlers. He sat down in the empty seat beside Marisol. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. But her expression softened, just a little. "You read it," she said under her breath. "Every word," he replied. "Then maybe you didn't fail her after all." 2 weeks later, the Southwood Heights Community Center buzzed with a kind of hope that felt brand new, but deeply familiar. A fresh coat of paint covered the old brick walls. Laughter spilled from inside, where folding chairs held rows of wide-eyed girls and their families. A handwritten banner above the door read, "The Elena Langston Opportunity Fund, Launch Day." No press, no speeches, just community. Inside, Marisol stood at the front, clipboard in hand, calling names from the registration list. Her voice was steady, but her eyes shimmered. This wasn't about her anymore. It was about them. Young girls with mismatched backpacks, mothers wiping away proud tears. They weren't numbers. They were promises finally being kept. Toward the back of the room, Richard stood quietly in the corner, wearing jeans and a sweater for once. No spotlight. No one rushing to shake his hand. He was just there, watching, present, and, for the first time in years, at peace. Maya walked up beside him with 2 cups of coffee. "They're calling this a comeback," she said lightly. He chuckled, eyes never leaving the crowd. "It's not." She raised an eyebrow. "It's a correction," he said. "Long overdue." Marisol caught his eye from across the room. She gave a subtle nod, and this time Richard returned it, not as a gesture of status or approval, but as an equal. A thank you. A beginning. Later, as the sun dipped behind the rooftops, Richard wandered into a quiet classroom. There, on the wall, was a framed photo of Elena. She wasn't sick in this one. She was radiant in scrubs and a messy ponytail, laughing mid-conversation. Someone had printed a quote beneath the photo. "Legacy isn't what you build for yourself. It's what you lift in others." He stood there for a long moment, just breathing it in. The silence didn't feel empty now. It felt full, like she was there, not haunting him, but proud of him. He touched the edge of the frame gently, as if saying goodbye, or maybe hello. And then he walked out into the orange light, where voices filled the air and lives were already beginning to change.